Okay, we're here in Ottawa on Tuesday, October 24th. With us today, we have Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry François-Philippe Champagne, and the President of the Treasury Board, Anita, Anand. We have some time for statements, hopefully as succinct as the Gettysburg Address, and likely 20 minutes for questions before the ministers might want to get back to question period of Parliament. Ministers, vas-y.
Okay, merci beaucoup. So let me just start by saying that the thoughts of all of us are with the loved ones of those killed and with the people of Sault Ste. Marie in the face of this horrific tragedy. Nos pensées accompagnent les proches des personnes décédées et des habitants de Sault Ste. Marie face à cette horrible tragédie. Je vais d'abord discuter de l'approche budgétaire globale de notre gouvernement en prévision de notre énoncé économique de l'automne. Ensuite, je vais céder la parole à la ministre Anand, qui vous parlera des comptes publics de 2022 à 2023, qui représentent la qualité de notre plan économique. Finalement, ce sera au tour du ministre Champagne de vous parler d'un financement important que nous accordons à la défense des consommateurs. Our fall economic statement will be narrowly focused on a few key challenges. It will be focused on building more homes faster and making more homes available for Canadians to live in, on continuing our work to make life more affordable for Canadians, and on continuing to deliver our fiscally responsible economic plan. As a result of our economic plan, since the depths of the pandemic, Canada has had the fastest rate of fiscal consolidation in the G7. This means we have brought down our deficits faster than any of our G7 peers. 2 weeks ago, data published by the IMF in its World Economic Outlook also reaffirmed that our government's economic plan has Canada on a responsible fiscal track, showing that Canada ranks as the country with the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the G7 by a significant margin, and with the fastest projected economic growth in 2024 as well. As detailed in the annual financial report released today by the Department of Finance, Canada's debt to GDP ratio was 42.2% in 22-23. That is down from 45.4% in the previous year and from a pandemic peak of 47.5% in 2019-2020. Today, Canada maintains both the lowest deficit and net debt to GDP ratio of all G7 countries. Cet engagement envers la responsabilité financière est l'un des piliers de la cote de crédit AAA du Canada et l'une des raisons pour lesquelles le Canada a connu une reprise économique aussi exceptionnelle depuis la récession attribuable à la COVID. Une reprise qui a fait en sorte qu'il y a plus d'1 million de Canadiens et Canadiennes de plus sur le marché du travail maintenant, comparativement au début de la pandémie. J'ai déjà hâte de vous faire part de ma mise à jour économique dans le cadre de notre énoncé économique de l'automne, mais pour l'instant, je vais céder la parole à Anita. Anita, over to you.
Merci, Chrystia. Hello, everyone. Introduction, we'll start here. The last number of years, you have seen our government work very hard to fight for a better future, which is why, as my colleague just mentioned, Canada has a AAA credit rating, low unemployment, and the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the G7. Just last week, we saw a decrease in inflation numbers. Our government is fully committed to supporting Canadians during this economic time while maintaining that our fiscal house is in order. This morning in Parliament, I tabled the public accounts of Canada for 2023, which include the government's audited consolidated financial statements. Dans le cadre de notre engagement à l'égard de la transparence et de la responsabilisation, le gouvernement fournit de l'information financière tout au long de l'année. And this includes the federal budget, the fall economic statement, quarterly financial reports, the fiscal monitor, and proactive disclosure, to name a few. The public accounts, for their part, are a snapshot in time of the government's financial situation. The 3 volumes that I tabled provide a comprehensive annual report on the government's financial results for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Les comptes publics aident les Canadiens à mieux comprendre comment l'argent des contribuables est investi. And through these documents, Canadians will see that unlike the opposition, our government believes in investing in Canadians time after time because we need to build a stronger economy and a stronger country. We will do this while supporting prudent fiscal management, and the public accounts show exactly that. I want to highlight 2 very important points. First, the annual deficit for the fiscal year 2022-2023 was $35.3 billion compared to the projected $52.8 billion. Permettez-moi de répéter ceci. Le déficit annuel pour l'exercice 2022-2023 était 35,3 milliards de dollars comparativement au déficit prévu de 52,8 milliards de dollars. That is great news. This shows that as we have during COVID, we can pivot and refocus our priorities to decrease our deficit. And we can do so not at the cost of cutting supports for Canadians like the opposition plans to do. We did it while introducing important measures to support Canadians like the grocery rebate, the Canada Dental benefit, the workers benefit, and so many other important investments. Deuxièmement, pour le 25e année consécutive, nous avons reçu une opinion de vérification propre de la vérificatrice générale. Cela indique la grande qualité des rapports financiers du Canada. This is a clean audit opinion. And this clean audit opinion tells you something that the opposition will never admit. We will always remain accountable, transparent, and fiscally responsible. So in this economic time, we must ensure that taxpayer dollars are being used most effectively. And that is what this economic team and our government is focused on. We will continue to strengthen our economy while delivering for Canadians. Bill after bill, law after law, we will build a stronger and more resilient economy. Thank you. Merci, miigwech.
Okay, over to you, François-Philippe.
Merci à mes collègues. Bonjour tout le monde. Good afternoon, everyone. Comme vous le savez, nous sommes à mettre en place des mesures concrètes pour accroître la concurrence au Canada, ce qui n'avait pas été fait au pays depuis des décennies. Vous vous souviendrez que l'an dernier, nous avons proposé une première série de modifications à la loi sur la concurrence. Et le mois dernier, nous avons présenté le projet de loi sur le logement et l'abordabilité, le projet de loi C-56, qui propose d'autres modifications pour assurer plus de concurrence, en particulier dans le secteur de l'épicerie. Canadians deserve more competitive prices. I think we can all agree on that. And the way to achieve that is to have more competition in our country. Now, as I said last week, if there is one thing that the Conservatives and the other parties can do to bring relief to Canadian consumers right now, is to vote for the affordability bill that we have before the House. That is the single most pressing measure to make sure that we have more competition in our country. The sooner they do that, the sooner it will help Canadians struggling with the cost of living. Plus tard aujourd'hui, je vais rencontrer certains groupes de défense des droits des consommateurs. Parce que même si nous savons qu'il est essentiel d'accroître la concurrence pour stabiliser les prix, nous savons aussi que nous devons utiliser tous les outils disponibles pour aider les consommateurs et les consommatrices canadiens. Et une façon concrète de le faire est d'accroître le soutien à la défense des consommateurs. C'est pour cela que nous avons investi des sommes importantes pour renforcer le Bureau de la consommation du Canada, ce qui est une première en près de 30 ans. Truth, we need to develop a stronger consumer advocacy culture in Canada. And that's something that government cannot do alone. By working in closer collaboration with consumer advocacy groups, we will be able to hold the grocers and the manufacturers more accountable. So today, I'm announcing more funding for nonprofit consumer advocacy organizations. We will finance projects that will focus on two key areas for Canadians. First, examining retail practices that negatively impact consumers like shrinkflation and dequaliflation. Second, we will finance organizations that help with the development, the promotion, and reporting on a standard grocery basket in Canada. Over the next 5 years, we're going to triple this funding to $5 million annually. It will also enable immediate expansion of previously approved projects to also include grocery and the retail sector in Canada. Notre gouvernement continue de travailler jour après jour pour rendre le coût de la vie plus abordable pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. Et comme vous me l'avez entendu dire à maintes reprises, la façon d'y arriver, c'est d'une première part de forcer les grandes chaînes d'alimentation de tenir leurs engagements. Deuxièmement, de renforcer le bureau de la consommation. Troisièmement, de continuer le travail vers un code de conduite des épiciers. Quatrièmement, d'établir un carrefour de données des prix des aliments. Et cinquièmement, de moderniser la loi sur la concurrence. As we said many times at this table, every day is a good day to fight for Canadians, and you can trust us that we'll keep on fighting every day for Canadians to stabilize price in this country. With that, we will be happy to take your question. Merci tout le monde.
Merci beaucoup. And now we turn to questions. One question, one follow-up, or we might save a little time with one per person, but we'll see. Mackenzie Gray, Global.
Hi, Ms. Freeland. The New York Times has been reporting that the U.S. government has advised the Israelis to delay a ground invasion into Gaza, in part to try and get hostages removed, as well to get more aid into Gaza. Has the Canadian government expressed similar concerns to the Israeli government?
Thank you for your question. And let me just say that our government, I think each of the ministers present here, is extremely concerned about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. We're particularly concerned about the Canadians who are there, and concerned about making it possible for them to leave. We are concerned about the hostages who are there. I think Canadians should know that Canada has committed $60 million in humanitarian assistance, and Canada is working very hard to get that assistance to the suffering people of Gaza. We absolutely are focused on working with all of our partners in the region to help the Canadians in Gaza leave, to help the hostages to be released, and to help relieve the humanitarian suffering, which is real. And, you know, all of us have heard from the Prime Minister, from the Foreign Minister, about the work that is being done on the ground with all of the partners in the region to alleviate that suffering.
I'm happy you brought up the money, because the Americans have also put forward a significant amount of money. Joe Biden has proposed to Congress that $14.5 billion US dollars be given primarily in military aid in his new proposal he's put forward. Is the Canadian government willing to give any military aid to Israel like we've done for Ukraine?
Our focus, as has been announced, is on providing that humanitarian support. That is consistent with the role that Canada has played, the longstanding role that Canada has played. And I think Canadians really should, this is a terrible, terrible situation. but Canadians should know that Canada is there doing what we can to alleviate this true humanitarian crisis, doing what we can for the hostages, doing what we can for the Canadians who are there in Gaza, even as we recognize Israel's right to defend itself within international law, which includes recognizing humanitarian concerns.
Émilie Bergeron, la presse canadienne.
Bonjour, Madame Freeland. Sur les transferts en santé, il n'y a toujours pas d'entente signée avec Québec, même si ça fait près de 9 mois que le gouvernement du Québec a dit qu'ils étaient, verbalement, a dit qu'ils étaient d'accord avec l'offre du fédéral. Votre collègue, M. Anand, semble montrer des signes d'impatience. Il dit qu'il aimerait que l'entente se conclue bientôt. Est-ce que vous êtes impatiente qu'il y ait une entente avec Québec?
Je pense que le fédéral et aussi le gouvernement du Québec veulent conclure une entente concernant la santé. Je veux souligner que le gouvernement fédéral, au début de cette année, a fait une promesse historique concernant la santé au Canada. Presque 200 milliards de dollars. C'est un investissement formidable. C'est un investissement nécessaire. Je pense que tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes dans chaque province, dans chaque territoire, comprennent l'importance de notre système de santé. Nous sommes fiers que le fédéral a fait cet investissement historique. Nous avons des relations efficaces avec la province du Québec. Nous travaillons en étroite collaboration. Nous avons juste annoncé il y a quelques semaines le plus important investissement industriel dans l'histoire du Québec. C'était une collaboration fédérale, provinciale. On est fiers de ça. Et on va continuer de travailler avec le Québec dans tous les domaines.
En suivi, une question pour Mme Anand. Les économies de 15 milliards de dollars que vous devez trouver, est-ce qu'on pourrait avoir du nouveau là-dessus dans la mise à jour économique? Et Mme Freeland, si vous avez quelque chose à dire aussi là-dessus.
Je vais commencer. Bien sûr, j'ai parlé avec mes collègues, bien sûr, et ils m'ont donné leurs lettres pour trouver l'argent nécessaire pour accomplir nos objectifs. Je vais livrer les résultats de ce processus pendant le mois de novembre dans le Supplementary Estimates. Donc, ça, c'est un processus que nous avons chaque année. Donc, ça sera pendant le mois de novembre. Et encore une fois, dans la première partie de l'année prochaine, avec le Main Estimates. Donc, il y a 2-3 fois dans l'avenir où on peut voir les résultats de ce processus. Mais bien sûr, je voudrais souligner que ça, c'est un processus de 15 milliards de dollars sur 5 ans. Donc, on va voir des étapes dans les mois et années prochaines. Donc, je ne sais pas si ma chère collègue a quelque chose à dire.
Non, je veux juste ajouter que cette économie de 15 milliards de dollars, le budget de 2023-24 est basé sur cette économie. Alors, c'est dans les chiffres, c'est dans les prévisions. Et on est très, très ferme et on est très, très clair qu'on doit faire ces économies. Tous les ministres sont d'accord. On a l'appui du Premier ministre. On a un excellent président du Conseil du Trésor. On va le faire parce que le budget est basé sur cela. Et on va le faire pour pouvoir faire les investissements nécessaires dans les Canadiens, comme les investissements industriels, comme les investissements dans la santé, et en même temps de maintenir une politique fiscale responsable.
Colton Prale, CTV.
To Minister Champagne, with your announcement today about dequalification and shrinkflation, we're looking at a 5-year timeline for this investment, but experts have said we're likely to see, and we're already seeing this, increase exponentially in the next 3 years. People are already having issues. This doesn't seem to match the need or the pace that so many consumers are feeling. How do you explain the delay and the length of time this is going to take to actually impact prices?
Well, I would say it's quite a moment. I mean, the Bureau of Consumer Affairs has not been refinanced for over 20 years. So what we're doing today is quite a step forward. I would put it the other way around. We're taking a major step. We don't have a consumer advocacy culture that much in Canada. And what we're saying is that government can do a number of things. We can reform competition. We can force the grocers to come to help us stabilize price. But what we need, just look south of the border, we need a much more vibrant consumer advocacy culture in this country to highlight the type of things that frustrate Canadians, like shrinkflation and dequalification. Now, this is part of what we're going to do. Like I said, all of these measures, I think that you're hearing from us week after week, it's a series of measures that's going to get us to where we want to be. I'm not saying this is the end of it. This is merely the beginning. I have other things in my toolbox that I'm thinking about how we can highlight that. And I must say, the media has been doing a great job in highlighting that for Canadians. But what we're saying today is that we're going to strengthen that because the financing of these organizations has been constant for almost 20 years, if not 30 years now. When we realize that, whether it's Public Interest Advocacy Center or l'Union des consommateurs au Québec, these organizations will amplify the voice of consumers to make sure that together we put pressure on manufacturers and on grocers. That's really the intent behind it, is that now we're putting the spotlight on something that Canadians have been concerned about. And our way of doing that from the government, we realize we can do that alone, but there's already a number of organizations out there which are doing a really good job. So we said if we just help them to do that, plus the work we're going to be doing with the data hub we're going to have on grocery, all of that is putting pressure. And I can tell you that the tone is changing, I would say, in this country when it comes to that, because I can tell you the grocers feel the pressure. Consumers, consumer groups, and obviously the government. And I think this is one more step that we're taking to make sure that we keep their feet to fire.
I'd argue grocers don't feel the pressure. I was chatting with Sobeys today, specifically about the calls to have their plans brought towards committee by November 2nd, and they reiterated that they have no plans to share any of their tactics prior to them actually happening. You've specifically called for grocers to be more transparent. So when you have the heads of these large companies defying your requests and saying they don't plan to follow what happens at committee, how is that grocers feeling the pressure?
Well, I don't know who you're talking to. I'm talking to the CEO, but I'd like to know who you talk to say what they're saying, because that's not what I hear from Michael Medland, who happens to be the CEO of the company. So maybe they need to organize their organization in a way that they have a constant messaging in terms of what they intend to do. Now, there's two things. One of the things is to answer the call of the government on behalf of Canadians to stabilize prices. The other thing is that, as you know, they're all trying to outcompete each other in this market. So there's a number of things that they would say to us that they would say we're going to be doing, but at the same time, they want to, maintain the competitive pressure. So if your question is, will they tell you exactly what they're going to do in 2 weeks? They may or may not. I'm pushing them to do that. But what we're going to be monitoring, and I spoke to Michael Medland. You can ask him. Actually, you should call him and tell me what he tells you, because I'm going to call him back and just after this press conference, and I'm going to ask him. You should see what we're going to be measuring is the results. You know, what I want to see, they can take the action they want. We gave them an objective. We said, you need to stabilize, help us to stabilize prices in Canada. How you do that? Obviously, every organization will have their own version of that because they want to outcompete the other. But what we're going to be measuring and what we're preparing to put public is the outcome of their actions. And like we said with the Minister of Finance, we've been very clear, if we don't see meaningful results, we're going to take more actions to make sure that we protect the interest of Canadians. That's really what we're going to be doing, and I can tell you we're preparing the reporting guidelines now. They know that, and they will provide the information. We'll make that public, and we're going to continue to put pressure, and if we need to do more, we'll obviously do more on behalf of Canadians.
Et ensuite, Raphaël Pierre, Agence QMI.
Oui, bonjour. Question pour Mme Freeland. Donc, concernant le budget de l'an 1 qui a été proposé par le Parti québécois, ils avancent que... Oui, M. Champagne disait que c'était fantaisiste. Donc, il dit, le chef du Parti québécois, que ça peut se faire à coût nul, la transition. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de ça? Et est-ce que le gouvernement, est-ce que vous avez une idée de à quoi ressembleraient les négociations advenant un tel scénario?
On l'a discuté avec François-Philippe avant de cette conférence de presse et je vais donner la parole à François-Philippe dans une minute. Je dirais juste cela. On a des excellentes relations avec le gouvernement de la province du Québec. On travaille en étroite collaboration dans les intérêts des Québécois et Québécoises. On est fiers de cela. On est fiers des investissements qu'on a faits dans la province du Québec, qui sont dans l'intérêt de la nation québécoise et dans l'intérêt du tout le Canada. En plus, on prend l'exemple du Québec. Par exemple, dans la question des garderies de petits-enfants, c'est vraiment l'exemple du Québec que nous a permis de créer un tel système dans tout le Canada. Et peut-être François-Philippe a quelque chose à ajouter.
Écoutez, vous m'avez entendu ce matin. Je ne pense pas qu'on a beaucoup de temps consacré à des budgets fantaisistes aujourd'hui. Regardez, on parle d'inflation, on parle de coût de la vie, on parle de logement. Je pense que là, nous, on va se concentrer. La question qu'on va poser ce matin, est-ce que vous avez réfléchi beaucoup à ça? Je vous dis, écoutez, avec ce qui se passe dans le monde aujourd'hui, on va se concentrer sur les enjeux des Québécois et des Québécoises. Et certainement, c'est ceux dont on parle aujourd'hui, l'abordabilité, le logement, et certainement d'assurer, on parlait des soins de santé. Ça, c'est les enjeux. Puis là, je peux parler comme Québécois, c'est les enjeux qui concernent les Québécois et les Québécoises. Pour le reste, honnêtement, je pense que les Québécois et les Québécoises comprennent qu'on a d'autres choses à faire présentement que de penser à des budgets fantaisistes d'un an un présentés par le Parti d'opposition à Québec.
Merci beaucoup. Madame Anand, le gouvernement du Québec, en fait, on a appris aujourd'hui qu'il y a plusieurs licenciements des gens qui ont été congédiés, les fonctionnaires, pour du vol de temps, ministère de la Justice, dans différents ministères. Je veux savoir si c'est quelque chose qui vous inquiète au fédéral, c'est-à-dire s'il y a des fonctionnaires, justement, qui profiteraient un peu de la situation du télétravail. Et est-ce que, donc, si vous avez des signes inquiétants en ce sens, si vous pensez intervenir?
Je n'ai pas encore entendu cette nouvelle, mais je pourrais dire que ça, c'est un difficile temps pour beaucoup de gens dans notre pays et dans le monde entier. Bien sûr, nous devons avoir une attitude très sensible et on doit savoir que peut-être leur famille, leurs parents, leurs amis sont en danger. Donc, pour ma part, je sais, en tant que présidente du Conseil du Trésor, que nous avons un code de valeur pour les fonctionnaires. Ça, c'est à peu près 250 000 fonctionnaires partout dans notre pays. Et il y a un code. Mais avec ça, c'est un temps difficile. Et je voudrais adresser toutes les situations avec cette approche et d'être humaine dans ces situations. Je ne sais pas si le vice-premier ministre a quelque chose à ajouter aussi, mais ça, c'est l'approche ici pour nous.
Non, je suis complètement d'accord avec ce que Anita a dit.
All right, we're still working within our original 20 minutes, which is great. We'll put in 2 questioners on the list in case we get tight on time. News Journal d'Analyse, Canadian Press, Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada.
Hi, Minister Freeland. On, I guess, the fall economic statement, there's an expectation that there's going to be housing policies announced there. Minister Fraser suggested that there would be, some additional spending on housing. I'm wondering how you plan to balance the need from your government's perspective to invest in housing and also what you're talking about today about fiscal responsibility. Do you see investing in housing worthwhile, even if it makes balancing the budget harder?
So I'm not going to comment specifically on what will be in the fall economic statement today, but let me just reiterate. Our focus in the fall economic statement will be the following. It's going to be a focus document, and there will be 3 principal objectives. One is to continue the work we have been doing very energetically on housing. I think people have already seen the impact of lifting the GST on new purpose-built rental construction. I think people are seeing the efficacy of the housing accelerator and how that is really being rolled out across the country and making a difference. And let me emphasize on the housing accelerator, that is fully booked in the fiscal framework. That is money that is already there. We are seeing it put to work. So you're going to see a continued emphasis on things we can do on housing to get more homes built and to ensure that there are more homes that Canadians can live in. Second area of focus is going to be, continuing what we've been hearing about from François-Philippe today and what we've really been working on hard this term, which is affordability for Canadians. And then third, we'll be doing all of that in a fiscally responsible framework. And you're quite right. That is a challenging balance to strike. Our government is committed to doing it.
Can I just add something, please, to that point? Because as the finance minister works up to the fall economic statement and delivering that for our country, I think the information that we are providing here today is extremely important. First of all, under her leadership, we have the annual deficit for the fiscal year 2022-23 at $35.3 billion when it was estimated, or at least projected to be $52.8 billion in budget 2022. That's the first point. And the second point is that for the 25th consecutive year, we've received an unqualified clean audit opinion. And those 2 facts are really important going into the fall economic statement, where, as she usefully said, we are striking a balance between ensuring fiscal responsibility on the one hand, but also addressing the most urgent needs of Canadians on the other, one of which is housing, the other is affordability, and doing it in a prudently fiscal manner. Thank you.
My second question also to Minister Freeland. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem wrote to the premiers last month in response to their calls to not raise interest rates and warned them that their requests could undermine the bank's independence. I'm wondering if the governor has shared similar concerns with you and whether you support his message to the premiers.
Well, I do speak regularly with the governor. In fact, I spoke with him just yesterday. And let me be very clear about our government's position. Our government recognizes the importance of the independence of the Bank of Canada. That is foundational for the institutional strength of Canada, for the strength of Canada's economy. When the ratings agencies look at Canada and when they grant us our AAA rating, one of the areas where Canada rates very highly is the strength of our democratic institutions and of our institutional architecture. And that is why, even as the leader of the opposition has repeatedly called for the governor of the Bank of Canada to be fired, our government has been very, very clear that we respect the institutional independence of the Bank of Canada, and we will continue to do so. I do, though, I can't resist to lean in on the point Anita made on fiscal responsibility. The reason that we're emphasizing the public accounts today is they are not forward-looking. They are a proof point of what our government has accomplished. And I think Canadians are kind of legitimately concerned about two things. Canadians are concerned about getting homes built. Canadians are concerned about the cost of living. They want us to invest in Canada. But we do have a culture of fiscal responsibility in our country. Canadians care about that. And so one of the things we're trying to do today is a little bit cut through the rhetoric and say, if you look at what we've actually delivered for 22-23, with the numbers that we're actually publishing today, we are delivering a deficit that is significantly lower than what we forecast. It's lower than what we forecast in the 22 budget, and it's lower than what we forecast just this spring. When we forecast that we forecast in the 23 budget that the 22-23 deficit would be $43 billion. Today we are reporting that it is $55.3 billion, and that is a significant swing in the debt to GDP ratio from its peak during the pandemic, an improvement of more than 5%. So to the fiscal responsibility point, I think we really want to provide some facts and offer some reassurance to Canadians.
Et en terminant ce matin.
Oui, bonjour.
Oui.
Ma question est pour Mme Freeland. Est-ce que vous pensez qu'Israël doit retarder son opération terrestre pour faciliter la libération des otages qui sont à Gaza en ce moment? Est-ce que c'est possible d'avoir une réponse claire?
Nous sommes très, très préoccupés aujourd'hui par la situation humanitaire à Gaza. Nous sommes préoccupés par la situation des otages et nous sommes préoccupés par la présence des Canadiens et Canadiennes au Gaza. Et notre gouvernement travaille avec tous les partenaires dans la région pour libérer les otages et pour aider les Canadiens qui sont là à partir. Et aussi, c'est une tragédie humanitaire. On comprend ça et c'est pourquoi le Canada va contribuer à 60 millions de dollars pour améliorer la situation humanitaire. Nous travaillons avec tous les partenaires, incluant tous les partenaires dans la région, incluant l'Israël, pour améliorer la situation humanitaire, pour assurer que les gens qui veulent peuvent partir. Et je veux souligner que la situation des otages est très importante et la situation des civils innocents qui sont là.
Quand vous parlez à Israël, est-ce que vous leur dites retardez votre opération militaire parce que sinon ça va nuire aux otages? Est-ce que vous leur dites ça? Oui ou non?
Comme j'ai dit, notre ministre des Affaires étrangères est là dans la région. Elle travaille beaucoup avec tous les partenaires dans la région. Notre Premier ministre aussi a beaucoup de conversations à l'étranger et j'ai juste expliqué quelle est la cible maintenant pour le Canada. La situation humanitaire nous concerne beaucoup. En même temps, on comprend, comme on a dit au début, qu'on a dit juste après cette attaque terroriste du Hamas, on comprend que l'Israël a le droit de se défendre dans le cadre de loi internationale de la guerre qui inclut les considérations humanitaires.
Thank you. Je sais pas.
C'est tout notre temps pour aujourd'hui. Désolé. Oui. Oh.
C'est 56. Oui, c'est une priorité quand François-Philippe
Ben non, mais écoutez,
a dit.
je demande à tous les jours, je demande à tous les jours au Parti conservateur justement de voter. Je vais leur demander encore aujourd'hui parce que ça prend l'accord des partis d'opposition pour aller de l'avant.
Oui.
Ben, écoutez, on va faire ce qu'il faut, mais
Merci.
Certainement, je pense qu'on a besoin de l'appui des partis d'opposition pour aller de l'avant parce que c'est la meilleure façon d'amener plus de stabilité dans les prix au pays. Merci tout le monde. Non, il faut que j'aille parce que vous allez me voir, je vais juste de l'autre bord, là. Je ne vais pas bien loin.